The Toothpaste Millionaire, chapters 2 and 3. Rufus was in my math class. I hadn't noticed him before the day he picked up my books, so I was surprised when he walked into the math class later the same day. Halfway through the class, someone behind me passed me a note. It said, "You will need 2¼ yards of 36-inch wide nylon, which is 97 cents a yard at Vince's, which will come to $2.1825 plus sales tax." At the end of the note was a neat little drawing. It showed the pattern for the saddlebags laid out on the 36-inch wide material with the length and width of each piece carefully marked. I was turning around to let Rufus know that I got the note when Mr. Conti, our math teacher, called out my name. "Kate McKinstry," he said, "would you please bring that note to me?" Mr. Conti's way of cutting down on notes in his class is to read aloud everyone he spots going around. It was just my luck to get caught with the first note anybody had ever passed me in his class. The kids around me were snickering. There hadn't been a juicy note to laugh at for a week, and I guess because I was a new kid, everybody was watching to see how I'd manage in a tight spot. The last thing I wanted to do was to get Rufus into trouble. I tried to look very innocent and said, "It's not exactly a note, Mr. Conti." "Well, what exactly is it?" Mr. Conti asked. I felt my face getting red, but I stuck to my explanation. "It's a kind of math problem," I said. "Then I'd be even more interested in seeing it," Mr. Conti said. There wasn't anything I could do except take the note up to Mr. Conti. He read it to himself and then looked up kind of surprised. "Believe it or not," he said to the class, "it is a math problem. The answer looks right, but I think we'd better check it out." And what happened then was that Mr. Conti went to the chalkboard and copied off Rufus's pattern for the saddlebags. He wrote in the measurements for each piece of the pattern, 16 inches by 14½ inches and 16 inches by 8¼ and so on. Rufus had everything down to fractions of an inch. Then Mr. Conti asked the class, "How many yards of 36-inch wide material would you need to cut out all the pieces for this pattern? And how much will the material cost at 97 cents a yard?" The class groaned. Somebody wanted to know what the pattern was for. That stumped Mr. Conti. "A blouse, I suppose," he said. He checked with me. "A blouse?" "Yes," I said, "a blue blouse." I hoped Rufus wouldn't think I was making fun of him. I sneaked a look at the back of the room, but I couldn't tell what Rufus was thinking. He was scrunched over his notebook as if he were working very hard on the problem. The answer looked very simple the way Rufus had the pattern all drawn out in the note, but it took the rest of the class the whole period to work out their answers. And everybody's answer was different. The class had that nylon costing anywhere from $2.91 up to over $10. Partly because no one could figure out how to fit the pieces of the pattern on the material without wasting a lot of cloth. I never did have to tell Mr. Conti who wrote the note. I think he might have had an idea, though, because Rufus's answers were the only ones that matched those in the note. When I went to pick up my bike after school, there was another note taped onto the handlebars. In this note were 2 maps. One map showed how to get to Vince's Army and Navy on Merchants Row, and the other showed how to get to Rufus's house from Vince's. Rufus lived only about 3 blocks from me. I rode straight down to Vince's after school. The store was in a part of town where I'd never been before, but Rufus's map was easy to follow. I got 2¼ yards of the same blue nylon that Rufus's bags were made of. Then I followed the other map to his house. I didn't know if Rufus expected me to show up with the nylon so soon, but when I knocked at the door, Rufus's mother said, "You must be Kate. Rufus is in the kitchen." In the kitchen, Rufus had the pattern for the saddlebags all laid out. He had already cut out the leather straps to fasten the bags with and had put buckles on the straps. Rufus gave me some pins and told me to pin the pattern shapes to the nylon. Then he cut out the pattern and set up his mother's sewing machine and sewed all the pieces together. But I still wouldn't have believed it if you had told me that within a year and a half, Rufus would be a millionaire. My father says it should have been obvious that anyone who could figure out within 1/4 of a yard how much material you need for a saddlebag could make $1 million making toothpaste. By supper time, the saddlebags were finished. I was amazed, but I'd never known anyone before who could make saddlebags, let alone toothpaste. Chapter 3, Toothpaste and Eyeshadow. I remember the morning Rufus got the idea for toothpaste. He had to do some shopping for his mother, and I went along with him. We were in the cut-rate drugstore because toothpaste was one of the things on Rufus's list. I was looking at some name brand eyeshadow that was on sale when I heard Rufus say, 79 cents? 79 cents for a 6-inch tube of toothpaste? That's crazy! It's better than 89 cents, I said. I pointed to some 89-cent tubes farther down the shelf. That's even crazier, Rufus said. What can be in those tubes anyway? Just some peppermint flavoring and some paste? Maybe the paste is expensive to make, I said. Paste? Rufus said. You don't need powdered gold to make paste. Paste is made out of everyday, ordinary stuff. Didn't you ever make paste? Toothpaste? I said. I mean, just plain paste for pasting things together, Rufus said. My grandma Mayflower showed me how to make paste when I was 4 years old. How do you do it? I asked. Simple, Rufus said. You just take a little flour and starch and cook them with a little water till the mixture has a nice pasty feel. Then you can use it to paste pictures in a scrapbook or paste up wallpaper. But you couldn't brush your teeth with that, I said. Well, I don't know, Rufus said. I never tried. But I bet toothpaste isn't any harder to make. Anyway, I'm not paying any 79 cents for a tube of toothpaste. Rufus crossed toothpaste off his mother's shopping list. But your mother said to get toothpaste, I said. You can't help it if it's that expensive. I'll make her some, Rufus said. I bet I can make a gallon of it for 79 cents. Maybe even for 78 1/8 cents, I said. Rufus laughed. Maybe, he said. Hey, do you think you could make eyeshadow too? It suddenly struck me that 69 cents for a smidge of eyeshadow about as big as a nickel, and that was the cut rate sale price, was a little bit expensive too. Eyeshadow's a kind of pasty stuff, I told Rufus. Maybe if you just added coloring to toothpaste. Maybe, Rufus said. But what's the point? Nobody really needs eyeshadow. If anybody's crazy enough to pay 69 cents for something he doesn't need, I can't be bothered about him. But everybody needs to brush his teeth. If I can make a good cheap toothpaste, that would be worth doing. I decided not to buy any eyeshadow. Rufus was right. Who needed it? In addition to which, I didn't even like eyeshadow. I had tried it, and I didn't like the feel of it or the bother of putting it on. But some of my friends were buying eyeshadow and trying out new shades and talking about which brand was the best, and I just got into the habit of going along with them. Rufus, I said as we rode our bikes home, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone before. I hate eyeshadow. I really hate it. I don't care too much about it one way or the other myself, Rufus said. And it just occurred to me, I said, that if I never buy any eyeshadow for the rest of my life, I'll probably save at least $10 a year. If I live till I'm 80, that's $700. Great, Rufus said. And if I could save money on toothpaste too, I said. Wow. I was thinking about how easy it would be to get rich just by not buying things the stores want you to buy. How much do you think it would cost us to make our own toothpaste? I asked Rufus. I don't know, Rufus said, but I just thought of something else. You know what I used to brush my teeth with when I stayed at my Grandma Mayflower's in North Carolina? You know what my grandma uses to brush her teeth? What? I asked. Bicarbonate of soda, Rufus said. Just plain old baking soda. You just put a little of the soda powder on your toothbrush. Bicarb, I said. That's the stuff my mother tries to give me when I feel sick to my stomach. Bicarbonate of soda and water. I can't stand the taste. Really? Rufus said. To me, bicarb has a nice refreshing taste, sort of like 7-Up without the lemon-lime flavor. But who wants to drink 7-Up without the lemon-lime flavor, I said. That's the whole point of 7-Up. I guess you're right, Rufus said. I guess that's why more people don't brush their teeth with bicarb.